When it comes to cruise fares, gratuities can be one of the most unpredictable add-on charges, capable of throwing your vacation budget off balance. If you've never booked a trip on a large cruise ship, you might not realize that cruise lines automatically add gratuities, which can increase your final bill by hundreds of dollars. That's why tipping has become one of the most hotly debated issues in modern cruising. Many travelers are now questioning the fairness and transparency of the daily automatic charges that cruise lines tack onto their accounts. In today's episode of Cruise Now, let's take a closer look at the real reasons more and more passengers are choosing to remove gratuities from their cruise vacations. For anyone unfamiliar with this charge, tips or gratuities are voluntary payments made to express appreciation for good service. Two key aspects stand out: voluntary and good service, implying that the recipient has gone above and beyond their normal duties. In the past, gratuities truly meant just that. Passengers would hand cash directly to the crew members they felt had delivered outstanding service, and it was generally assumed that all departments on board were being paid a fair wage. Tips were simply an extra reward for those in passenger-facing roles. Today, however, many cruise lines have abandoned the idea that gratuities are either voluntary or tied to exceptional service. When automatic gratuities were introduced, the lines argued that this system was fairer, as the pooled money could be split and distributed across all departments, contributing to the guest experience, ensuring that everyone benefits. However, no matter how you look at it, any charge that isn't clearly disclosed will always leave passengers feeling uneasy, and that discomfort drives many cruisers to find reasons to remove gratuities from their bill. The first and most frequently mentioned reason is the lack of transparency. Cruise lines automatically apply daily per-person gratuities with rates that vary by cabin category. Suite guests typically pay more for their upgraded service. In recent years, these fees have been steadily increasing across almost every cruise line. Cruise companies claim that these gratuities are distributed not only to the crew members you interact with directly, but also to behind-the-scenes staff, such as laundry workers and kitchen teams. On the surface, this sounds perfectly reasonable. The real question is how these tips are actually divided and whether every dollar truly reaches the crew, or if the cruise lines are keeping a portion for themselves. I believe that if cruise lines were transparent about exactly what percentage of the cost goes to each department, most cruisers would happily agree to pay. But that's not the case. Even crew members will tell you they have no idea how the money is split or what percentage they actually receive. They only know that their paycheck shows a line indicating a portion comes from passenger gratuities. Even after understanding the daily service charges, many travelers remain frustrated with how tipping works on board. One of the biggest annoyances is the risk of double tipping. Bar tabs, specialty dining bills, and even coffee receipts often include a built-in service charge, typically around 15 to 20%, yet the bill still shows an extra line for additional gratuity. If you're not paying close attention, you might unknowingly tip twice. Cruise lines also use gratuities as a marketing tool to advertise lower fares. Sometimes you'll see an unbelievably cheap cruise deal, only to find out later that there's a hefty per-day, per-person gratuity charge, especially for higher cabin categories, waiting at the end of your trip. In other words, cruise lines expect passengers to pay more than the advertised fare. They rely on cruisers to cover the base fare plus gratuities so that the crew can earn an industry-standard wage. To me, this feels like a form of exploitation, and to guarantee payment, the lines simply auto-add these charges to your onboard account. The second major reason many passengers are now opting out of gratuities is that the system fails to reflect service quality. Traditional tipping is meant to reward good service and discourage poor performance, but a flat daily charge applies regardless of how attentive or lackluster the crew may be, effectively removing any incentive for exceptional service. Additionally, travelers also mention a loss of personal interaction, explaining that tipping in person allows them to look crew members in the eye, say thank you, and create a meaningful exchange, something that disappears when a computer processes the payment. Beyond these issues of control and connection, preferences around generosity also play a role. Some passengers want the freedom to tip more than the preset amount when they feel service has been outstanding, while others simply want to tip less, arguing that the daily rates are too high or that children and additional cabin guests should not be charged at the same level as adults. Together, these reasons are fueling a growing movement of cruisers who choose to remove automatic gratuities and manage tipping on their own terms. However, as pushback against gratuities continues to grow, cruise lines are finding creative ways to justify and repackage these charges, making it harder for passengers to completely avoid them. First, many cruise lines are rebranding the fee to make it sound less like a tip. For example, Princess Cruises calls it a daily crew appreciation charge. Holland America Line refers to it as a crew appreciation and service charge, while a transatlantic voyage aboard the Cunard Queen Mary simply labels it a service charge. In addition, some cruise lines are normalizing gratuities by offering upgraded fare bundles that include tips along with Wi-Fi, beverage packages, specialty dining, or shore excursion credits. For example, Princess Plus and Princess Premier fares, as well as Windstar's all-in pricing, wrap gratuities into the total cost. Other lines have gone even further, raising base fares to include gratuities entirely, a model adopted by Azamara, Saga Cruises, P&O Cruises UK, Marella, and ultra-luxury brands like Silversea, Seabourn, and Regent Seven Seas. The impact of these changes is clear. Passengers now often pay a cruise fare that automatically includes gratuities, no matter which itinerary they choose. While most cruise lines, with the exception of Norwegian Cruise Line, still allow passengers to remove automatic tips once on board, very few guests actually do so. Overall, discussions among cruisers remain divided. Many people express frustration and argue against automatic gratuities, yet within American tipping culture, this remains a deeply ingrained and difficult fee to escape. And in that context came news that hit like a thunderbolt. Virgin Voyages, a line once praised for including gratuities in the fare as a key point of difference, has now changed course. Virgin just dropped a bombshell. They've rolled out a brand new excursion system with 3 tiers: basic, mid, and premium. The higher the tier, the more perks you get. Okay, fair enough. That part makes sense. But here's the kicker. Completely out of nowhere, Virgin Voyages is now charging gratuities. And not just any gratuities, we're talking some of the highest in the industry. If you prepay, it's $20 per person per day. If you wait until you're on board, that jumps to $22 per person per day. Honestly, my heart sank when I heard this. I was really rooting for Virgin to be the exception, to lead the way and inspire other cruise lines to follow. But no, here we are. I get it. There are financial reasons, accounting reasons, whatever. But still, it hurts to see them backtrack like this. So the question is, will they become the ones to lead a return to separating gratuities from the cruise fare? And will other cruise lines follow? We'll just have to wait and see. From the company's side, Virgin stated that these changes were meant to provide greater transparency and allow passengers to pay only for what they actually plan to use. However, most seasoned cruisers have reacted with skepticism, arguing that the new tiered pricing system seems even more confusing. Some noted that it feels very much like the airline model. And honestly, does anyone really like that model? Well, that's a question I'll throw to you. What do you think? Drop a yes if you like it or a no if you can't stand it in the comments below. So if cruise passengers themselves can't influence the cruise line's policy, what approach can we take toward this fee? The key is to develop a tipping strategy, one that rewards the crew members who provide exceptional service while avoiding unnecessary overspending. But before sharing my personal strategy for smart tipping, let's take a look at a comparison chart of gratuity rates across major cruise lines. Each line sets different daily charges, and understanding these numbers can help you choose the cruise that best fits your budget. After that, I'll share the tipping method I learned from a seasoned cruiser, one that ensures your money goes where it truly matters. When I first started cruising more than 10 years ago, I had no idea tipping was even a thing. On that very first sailing, I didn't know about automatic gratuities or when to give extra, so I probably undertipped without realizing it. But as I learned more about cruise culture, I went completely the other way. I began tipping a lot. I would slip my cabin steward cash twice, once at the start of the cruise and again at the end, just to be sure I got great service. At the bar, I was handing over $1 almost every time I ordered a drink, even though my drinks package already included gratuities. I even tipped the main dining room waiters, despite keeping the automatic charges in place. Looking back, it was a generous but expensive habit for someone who wasn't removing the standard service fees. On the next cruise, I decided it was time to pull back and rethink my tipping. After all, every drink already carries an 18% gratuity, whether you buy it individually or as part of a package. My new approach is to tip selectively, focusing on staff I interact with often. For example, if I spend most of my time at one bar and the bartenders start to recognize me and remember my favorite drink, I'll give them something extra. I've also stopped tipping my cabin steward twice. I used to leave money on the first day after reading on a forum that it guaranteed good service. Now I realize that isn't necessary. The stewards do their jobs well regardless. If someone goes above and beyond, I'll happily give extra, but only at the end of the cruise. Because I usually choose anytime or freestyle dining, I rarely tip the main dining room staff directly. With flexible dining, you rarely see the same waiters twice. That said, I have tipped when a team served me multiple times and remembered little details, like the time a waiter kept my table stocked with warm bread after noticing how much I loved it. If I ever return to a set dining time with the same servers each night, I'd tip them unless the service was truly subpar. But honestly, even when service has been less than great, I've still left something out of appreciation. Deep down, I wish cruise lines would simply pay their crew fairly and stop relying on passengers to supplement wages through automatic gratuities. I'd gladly pay a slightly higher cruise fare if it meant the crew received consistent, fair compensation, without depending on whether guests remove or add extra tips. That's where I stand today. I still tip, but I do it thoughtfully and purposefully, rewarding the people who make my cruise special rather than automatically handing out cash at every turn. What about you?